Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 50 by 50. Whatever happened to the Harvard class of 1976? I'm a member of that class, Michael Conniff. I'll be your host, and I am really happy to be joined by a very illustrious person in the world of media uh, uh, and our classmate, Richard Buster Gonzales. How are you, Buster?
Doing well.
I can't
As I
believe you went
speak,
through your career without being Buster on the radio.
it leaked out on the air at NPR several times, but you had to have been paying attention to hear it.
I think it is undoubtedly the best nickname in our entire class.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I know you got it because of Buster Brown shoes.
That's right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
If people can remember back that far. So I want to just point out at the top, Richard, for 34 years, was a decorated and distinguished radio reporter at National Public Radio. I think it's one of the great media gigs, retired in 2019. And his wife was also a radio anchor at the local PBS station. She just retired in 24. So
That's right.
you're well into it. And in your 25th reunion book, you said something like, you know, I have a happy marriage, I have great kids, and I can pay my bills. So life is good. Does that about cover it?
That covers it. I try not to sweat the rest of it.
I got to ask you, do NPR reporters get a pension?
No, no.
No pension. 401k, baby.
401k,
That's it.
it's called a 403B, the
That's it.
nonprofit
That's it.
version.
So do you miss being on the air? Because, it's I know as a journalist myself at times that, you're always, what's the right way to put it? You are always, you're in the public eye. People know your name. People, when you introduce, it's kind of no, it's probably not glamorous is the wrong word, but visible, right? So
Yeah.
did you feel like you lost some of that visibility? And if you did, was it welcome?
Yes, I did lose a little bit of that visibility. I didn't mind it at the time because I was ready to let it go for a while. I don't really miss the work so much as I miss the days when I was having fun. Let's put it that way. And there were
Tell me what
periods
fun
when,
was like at NPR. What was fun?
well, it's just, being able to come up with an idea for a story, call virtually anybody in the English speaking Western world and say, hey, would you talk to us? Would you talk to me? And they would invariably say, of course. And then boom, you get to talk with them.
And this is a key thing about being a reporter, isn't it? So I had this to some degree in Boston when I was at the Boston Herald, which is one of two papers, the other being
Mhm.
much
Right.
better, the Globe. But you got your phone calls returned.
Yes. Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's the essence of journalism is like getting your calls returned, because if you don't get them on the record, you don't get the quote, you don't get to talk to them. So NPR, I would think, would be one of the great calling cards that not everybody, because NPR certainly has a lot of critics, but the people you're calling for interviews would probably welcome that, welcome the
Especially when I
opportunity.
was working in DC. When I was in DC, I was in DC from 1986 to 1994. And I could call virtually anybody in town and say, can we talk? And they'd say, sure, I'll be over here in 15 minutes. Boom, right? And that was terrific.
So
I
when you were at
learned,
Harvard, I'm sorry, go ahead, keep going.
no, I learned later when I transferred from DC to California to San Francisco that things were different there. That the media, what is it? DC is kind of a media petri dish, right?
Yeah.
And once I got to San Francisco, uh, sure, we can talk. You're calling from NPR and KQED. Yeah, let's talk. How about if we talk 3 days from now? And I said, no, 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 we got to talk today. No, 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 I can talk to you on Thursday. So that was a period of adjustment. Um,
I assume we started, the same post Watergate era, but I could get anybody on the phone. I don't recall anyone ever turning me down. And here's the key point I wanted to make was that there were no PR people. There was
right.
nobody in between you and the source and so I remember how weird it was for somebody to say, "Oh, I'm going to have my PR person on this call," and I said something like, "Well, I don't like that idea, but if you must do that, I'm just going to ignore them. So I'm going to act like
Yeah.
they're not there." But when did you know? at Harvard, or did you know at Harvard that you would become a journalist?
No idea. I just, I had this vague notion that I wanted to be published. But, I'll be quite honest with you. I did not have the confidence to comp at Crimson or at HRB, WHRB. Hung around at HRB a little bit freshman, sophomore year.
Me too. Yeah.
But it wasn't happening at the time. After graduation, I spent a better part of a year traveling in Latin America with one of our classmates, Ellen Green. And I had this vague notion I wanted to be a correspondent, a journalist. But I didn't know anybody who's going to publish me back at home.
Was there anyone who inspired you, like a Hunter Thompson, or was there a role model?
No, not really. I can't say that there was.
Yeah.
All I knew was that nobody named Gonzales was on network news or being published on the front page of the Times or the Post. And if I saw someone with a Hispanic or a Spanish surname, I'd wake up and check it out. But there were very few.
You were Mexican American, and so there were no role models.
Basically, that's right. There weren't.
In the English-speaking press, at least.
Right, and so I basically had to figure it out by myself.
And so, what constituted your Harvard experience? I had this recently, in the course of doing these podcasts. I had to admit to somebody that, I really didn't do anything exceptional. Excuse me, at Harvard. I had never thought of that, Buster. I was, I thought I did pretty good. And as I thought back, my grades were okay. Everything was sort of okay, but not great. I was JV lacrosse, not varsity, and I was like, geez, it wasn't exactly a blueprint for success, but it worked out okay. But how did you spend your time? You were from a very poor family, I think it's fair to say.
Yep.
And you were coming from Oakland, and this is on Medium. You wrote a terrific piece about your family. Your father ultimately became a very important community organizer, but he got divorced from your mother, so she had 4 kids she had to feed. And not only that, but I think I know I was surprised to see the level of discrimination. You had to act like you were Portuguese when you got, when you were starting.
My uncles had to act like they were Portuguese in order to get jobs in our hometown, which was not Oakland, which was Richmond, California, just north of Oakland and Berkeley in the Bay Area. My uncles had to pass as Portuguese to get jobs at the local oil refinery, Chevron refinery. And that was in the 30s and 40s. Things were changing in the 60s, not by much, but that was the environment that I came out of. You asked me about Harvard. Well, I mean, when I think about Harvard, I was constantly looking for the handles, man, right? Somebody show me the handle so I can grab onto this and figure out what the hell am I doing here and why am I here?
Grab onto to what?
Grab onto a sense of purpose so I can find out why am I going through this experience where I'm first generation college student. I had never been east of Reno. I had never been on a jet plane before.
Wow.
I'm kind of I'm not a type A personality. I'm pretty laid back. I watch and I observe. I'm not pushing myself out there all the time. And all of a sudden I'm surrounded by all these affluent type A's that are just, I meet a guy and the first thing he tells me is he's published his novel already. I'm going,
no, that's not true. That's not true. But I get the point. Point taken.
Yeah.
And how did you even think of applying to Harvard? Where you must have been a very good student, I'm guessing.
I was fortunate in that I went to a very good public high school, John F. Kennedy High School in Richmond, California, which I'm trying to write a little bit about, which was a successful model of racial integration in the 60s. It was achieved through busing. It was completely integrated by race and by class. It was a public inner city high school in the ghetto in Richmond that attracted a lot of affluent white and Asian students because it was a brand new physical plant, had veteran teachers who ran very good programs. Long story short, in the 20-year heyday of this high school, I was the seventh person in a group of about 14 who went to Harvard. Okay, out of a inner city high school. Um, we were pipelined to the Ivies, to MIT, to Stanford, Cal,
So there was
et cetera, et cetera.
encouragement. There was a pipeline. They said you can do
There was the
this. You can get
pipeline.
in.
I got in. I got the letter of admission. I went to my mentor at the time, a teacher named David Dansky. I said, Mr. Dansky, what do I do now? I got Harvard. I got Stanford. What do I do? He said, Richard, he says, if you have any national ambitions, you go to Harvard. And I
That
said,
might not be as true today. I've often thought like my career has actually been a Stanford career in tech and
ah,
so on. And that I might have been happier. I don't regret Harvard, obviously, but that's an interesting question. I wanted to ask you what it was like to be a Latino in the Richmond ghetto.
Will, since my family had been in that city long before anyone else, and I mean, we were one of the original Latino families in our city.
Mm-hmm.
My great grandparents got there in the 1920s when only a few thousand people lived in that city. By my by the 60s, Latinos were only about 5% of the city. So we were a minority among minorities, and we grew up in an entirely black neighborhood. There were 6 Mexican American families in a 40 square block black neighborhood, and I I don't say this easily, or because people may not understand what I'm saying or misinterpret what I'm saying, but basically, I was raised Blaxican. All right,
You were raised black.
Blaxican.
Okay. What is a Blaxican? How does that? What does that look like? Can you
Um,
do it for us on the camera?
Mexican American surrounded by black people and
Yeah.
adopting, understanding African American culture, right?
Yeah.
That's that.
So you were a minority compared to you. They were. I don't know if they were majority, but they were certainly not. It sounds like it was totally integrated. So they were just one of a group.
Other than teachers, I did not know any white people until seventh grade.
Wow,
Okay.
that's
Anyway, that's
amazing.
that's my point.
What do you? How do you think that shaped you? That early experience.
Or just, people are people, right? I
Yeah.
learned that whether you're Mexican, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're later understanding and meeting and having a lot of Jewish friends, people are people, right?
Yeah.
And we're all just trying to survive and get along and, raise our families.
So
That's what.
pardon me, but when you get to Harvard, you are fish out of water.
Oh,
You're in a class with I think we've got 45 Andover guys, 45 Exeter. I think they were all guys or close
yeah,
to it. I think they were all guys. And then Masters of the Universe, first year that Harvard women are in the yard. It's actually a post-protest era, in my view, in retrospect.
right.
Did you expect when you got there that there'd be sit-ins and things like that?
I Partly, but I had been warned that maybe that day was over. There were a
Okay.
couple African American friends who preceded me, grew up in my neighborhood, preceded me at Harvard. One guy was Richard Mitchell, another guy was Kenny Green, and they kind of basically said, "Okay, here's what the score is. Things are changing. Uh, the kids got it out of their system, and we don't think that the university is going to stand for too much more of that."
I
And they were
see.
right.
So
So
you were ready for that. You were ready for that. And did you live in the yard?
no, I lived in Greeno, in the Union
Okay.
dorms,
Now that's
which
just outside the yard.
just outside the yard on the
Just
other side
outside
of
the yard.
Freshman Union. And
Mass
so,
Ave,
and
right?
there were no women in Greeno. Okay, there were no girls. So we were.
That sounds like a song. There were no women in Greeno. I'm not going to give you a second line, but that's yeah. So
Yeah.
So who were your roommates? Who did did you find were there Latino friends? Did you gravitate to that? Did you gravitate
Yeah,
toward
sure.
black friends?
Um, I had there were I think 7 or 8 Mexican Americans in our class,
Is that
and we
right?
were all very different. Yeah, we were all very different. Different
Did
stages.
everybody know everybody?
We tried to meet each other, but various people, not
Yeah.
everybody needed to know everybody, right?
Right, of
I'm not,
course.
you know, my key freshman roommate was a townie from Cambridge, from Central Square. His name was
Really.
Rick Rose, Eugene Richard Rose, and he had 3 other brothers. There was
He had
Rick. There was
literally taken us the subway one stop to go to Harvard.
right.
Yeah.
Rick, Ronnie, Randy, and Robert Rose. And they were kind of my anchors to reality because they were working class guys from just around the corner, right?
Were they all at
Um,
Harvard or just the one?
2 of them were at Harvard,
Two of them. Okay.
right? Um,
So
and they were
you understood the working class environment, obviously. Like you grew up
right,
in that environment.
and the Rose brothers were like the car talk guys, click and clack, right? Just
Great.
street guys, Cambridge, Boston, took no one seriously, put you on the edge immediately. If you had to have your stuff together
Had
in
the
order to hang with
accent,
them.
right? Yeah, had
Oh
the
yeah,
accent,
the whole
the whole
thing,
nine
right?
yards. It's not
Taught me
people
how to.
don't understand. Pardon me, Richard Buster, but people don't understand. It's not just the accent; it's the attitude.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You can't
When
separate
I
it.
saw what was Matt Damon's movie, Goodwill Hunting,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Boom! I saw those guys. Said, I know those guys.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
those guys. I know their attitude.
Yeah. And that I'm not sure exactly what year that came out, but wasn't long after we were there. It might have been about 20 years after we were
Mhm.
there.
Yeah,
Goodwill
yeah,
Hunting,
yeah.
but very realistic and kind of caught the arrogance as well. Very interesting. Probably one of the best Harvard movies there is. You don't really classify things that way, but there
Mhm.
was
Yeah,
the paper
would
chase
agree.
about Harvard Law School, and a few others. Probably a lot of them, but that was a good one.
Love
So
story.
you get to Harvard. What do you grab onto? What is it? Organizations? Is it
Fortunately,
people?
my freshman year proctor was also a Latino from Northern California, also
Just by
working class,
chance? By
just by
chance?
chance. His
Okay.
his name was Hugo Morales, and he was my proctor in Greeno. Um, and he was a very interesting character. He had been born and raised in Mexico, came to Northern California around age 9, and then by age 18 he was at Harvard, right? Um, and then he was class of 72, fall of 72. He's a first year law student at Harvard
Mhm.
and a proctor. And he was my guy who's basically there to show me the ropes, show me a couple of the handles. He was the
Okay.
one who he had a show at WHRB called La Hora Hispana, the Spanish Hour, Saturdays at 6,
In
you know,
Spanish?
in Spanish. And it
Okay.
might have been the only thing in Spanish in Boston at the
Probably
time.
was. Probably was.
And so it's just, music, a little public affairs, a little more music, and, join us
Okay,
next week.
because I slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night, I'm going to act like a psychoanalyst. I'm going to say, oh, that's why you went into radio. Your
Yeah,
first role model at Harvard um,
was Hugo
was both,
Morales.
a proud Latino
Yeah.
and public with radio. Do you think, was it a subliminal effect or more direct?
It was very direct because
Okay.
Hugo had an idea. He had a dream. He shared this. He said, as soon as I get done with Harvard Law, I'm going back to California. I'm going to build a nonprofit community radio station.
No kidding.
Okay, right. I'm saying, all right. I think I might be able to sign on to that idea.
Did he do it?
And he did it. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what was it called? What were the call letters?
Oh God, it's I want to say HW, but W is East Coast. I can't remember.
That's okay.
It's called
It's a tough
but
question.
in Fresno. It's called Radio Bilingüe, bilingual radio. And Hugo also built a network of about 30 similar stations all across the country.
No
There are
kidding.
30 small nonprofit community radio stations, primarily serving local Hispanic
And
audiences
still going.
and still going. Yeah.
And did you
Here,
participate in that? Were you on the air at
no,
all?
here was the idea. He starts his station in Fresno. I said, Hugo, how can I help? How can I help? He said, well, we need to be able to train people. Get trained. Find out where you can learn how to, and then come back and help us out.
Training.
So that's what I did.
So
So I
isn't
wound
that
up.
kind of do you ever kind of pinch yourself a little bit and say that you had this really long, satisfying, I think, career,
Yeah,
and it started because by chance your proctor was a Latino radio guy
exactly.
with a
That's what
mission.
happened.
With a mission.
That's right.
And when you went back, were you speaking English or Spanish on the air?
English.
English.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I grew up in a household. Spanish was not emphasized, not discouraged, not encouraged. In my household, my dad spoke to my mother in Spanish. My dad spoke to us exclusively in English. My mother spoke to us in Spanglish. We were in a we were in a black neighborhood where we're learning Ebonics, Black English.
Blaxican.
Yeah, and I did not understand this until I came home from freshman year. The summer I came home from freshman year, I was sitting in my mom's house, my house I was raised in, listening. I was going, wait a minute, what is going on in this house, right?
And now you know. Now you knew. Now you figured you saw how it all fit together. But
Yeah.
when you where did you go to get trained? You said he told you to get trained. Where did you go?
So one of the places he asked me to go check out this place called KPFA in Berkeley.
Famous
KPFA is
station.
sister station, a left-leaning sister station of WBAI in New York. Okay,
Ah,
uh, they,
another famous station.
another famous station.
Yeah.
Uh, they've got the Pacifica Radio Network's got stations in D.C., New York, L.A., Houston, and Berkeley. I
Yeah,
walked
Pacifica
into
is very, very prominent. There were times when I was in San Francisco and elsewhere where you actually listened to Pacifica. That's what you were
yeah,
listening to. That was the
right,
public
right, right,
radio feed. It was a
yeah,
feed within public radio, right? Do I have that right?
correct, right,
Feed within public radio.
yeah.
And so you went to and you trained there. That's where you learned.
Basically, I used to say the KPFA was like a community radio excuse me, a community-based organization that happened to have a radio license, or a radio station that was, opened its doors to the community.
So one
Almost
other note,
anybody.
one other like sort of obvious thing here is that your father was a community organizer, right?
My dad was a working Joe who reinvented himself as a community activist and leader during the war on poverty.
And he
So
has a he had a he founded an organization that does it still exist? It lasted a long time. I know that. What was it called?
well, man, you've done your homework. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, you've had an interesting life. It was easy.
He founded two organizations. One was called the United Council of Spanish-Speaking Organizations, which is basically an advocacy organization for, in the 1960s, helping immigrant families with largely translation and representation. You
Uh-huh.
had a problem with the utility company. You had a problem at schools. Your kid was in jail. They'd go and help those families. And then later he founded another organization um, called Familias Unidas, United Families,
Hmm.
which is a nonprofit geared towards providing culturally relevant mental health services
So,
to
so
immigrant families.
in your radio career, did you see it? Was that the path to have in effect, maybe in the back of your mind, the mentality of a community organizer, but now you had this tool, the microphone, the airwaves, where you could use it to do what? Would be my question.
Well,
We're talking earlier in your career now.
early in my career, I could use it to tell stories that weren't being told anywhere else. Okay,
Okay.
basically. Um,
Do you
you know,
remember one? Is there, you got one for us? A really good one that you wouldn't have, that we, people would not have seen elsewhere?
well, just there might be small stories such as
Yeah.
you know a group of Mexican American women who were the backbone of a local food company that wouldn't exist without their labor, and yet they were
Yeah.
getting they're getting reamed because they just weren't being paid very well.
Yeah.
And when they went on a strike, they were out on the street, and I was there to tell the story. You know, the other story that was relevant at the time, which our roommate Kurt Chilcott referred to, was that around that time there were a lot of plant closures. Right at that time, at the early Reagan years, when
Yeah.
those blue collar jobs were getting sucked right out of blue collar America, and we know where that led. But
Yeah. He gets no blame for that. He managed, the Teflon really worked there. But
yeah,
you and Kurt had similar mentalities and philosophies, didn't you? And is that why you became friends at Harvard?
possibly. Also because we were Westerners. He was from Arizona. He was from Tucson. I was from California. You know, I went to Tucson for the first time in when Gabby Giffords, the Congresswoman, was shot. Right,
You did the
and
story. You
so
went to report the story.
went there to report the story. I was one of a couple of reporters who went to go cover it. First time in Tucson. I get there. I'm looking around, and I thought, now I understand Kurt. now,
What did you see? What did you
well,
see?
I realized, he came out of the Southwest. He was just like me, totally displaced in Cambridge, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So, but
Yeah. All
it
we
was
had was music and marijuana, Buster. That was
we
that
had
was
plenty
our
of it.
bond. But no, it's interesting. Both he and you kind of, lived out this thread. I think lived out this kind of philosophy in very different ways. But I wanted to ask you. So when does this experience and early years in community radio, does it make you into kind of a crusading journalist?
That's an interesting question. I would assume you have to say yes. All right.
Okay.
Anybody who listens to my product, to the stories I put out, you know, they'd be smart enough to understand, what motivates me. At the same time, when I got to NPR after 5 years at KPFA at the Pacific Radio, I go to NPR in 1986, and one of the first things the boss there said, "Well, Richard, we know what you've been doing for the past 5 years, and this is not what we do at NPR.
Jeez.
We are not about advocacy journalism at NPR." And I said to the man, a name everybody would recognize. I said, "Sir, if I wanted to continue doing advocacy kind of journalism, I would have stayed at KPFA. And so I'm here to do something different here at NPR." And
And
at that
so
time,
how would you describe what the difference was for people who aren't journalists?
NPR aspired to be much more mainstream, right?
Yeah,
There
balance
were
both sides of the
balance,
story,
both
not taking
sides,
a
et cetera,
viewpoint.
et
Now,
cetera, et cetera.
Buster,
Several
there are
editors.
people who would argue with
Oh,
that.
I know,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
So
Right, right, right.
another
Oh, yeah.
that's another
Um,
subject. But you
and,
get
and they wouldn't, and they wouldn't be wrong. All right,
and they
they
wouldn't be
wouldn't be
wrong.
wrong.
That's right.
No.
You get to DC in '86.
Hmm.
Did you have a beat? Did you? I mean, you're in Washington. You're going to cover the government, but
Right, right.
did you have a particular slice of that pie to cover?
Yeah, yeah. Two good things happened to me. One, I was basically told, you go to the State Department, and you are covering foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy with regards to South Africa, Southern Africa, and Central America. Okay, so
That's kind of an amazing beat. That beat doesn't exist anymore.
right. That was the Contra
Yeah,
Wars, the proxy wars in
yeah,
Southern
yeah.
Africa, Mozambique, and Namibia, and what's going on in South Africa.
Basically, if I could just interrupt for a second, that we're talking about stuff that's ignored pretty much um,
Yes, yes.
by the
Well,
media historically.
once those wars are over,
Yeah,
Americans no longer pay attention to them. The
right.
other great thing that happened to me, the really cool thing that happened, was that my mentor was Daniel Shore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Allow me
And
to just, interject that he was fearless. Um,
yeah.
he was certainly a role model,
Mhm.
um, and he got into trouble a fair amount, Daniel Shore, but
For
he
doing his
but he
job.
but he persevered. So what did you learn from him?
um, God, what he was fearless, right?
Hmm.
And very. I just thought I think he's fearless and very clear eyed. And he would just share these anecdotes with me that I go, okay, I get that. Uh, for example, I don't know if there was a a Post or New York Times reporter who got kicked out of the Soviet Union in 1986, I think, for being a spy. And he said he wasn't a spy, but he got kicked out for being a spy. He came home, and it was my job to do that story. Um, Nick Daniloff. And so Dan Shore comes to me and says, Richard, he says, oh, what do you think of the story? I said, Daniel Shore is asking me my opinion about the story. I'm swallowing my tongue. And he says, I'm sure Nick is okay, he said to me. He said, but you really have to be careful when you're in a situation like that. And he talked to me about covering, being in Moscow as a correspondent for CBS, and how he told me if the embassy asked him for information, he'd say, sorry, find out yourself.
Yeah,
You
because the
you
minute
just
he
have to
tells him
be
he
cautious.
is a spy.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
I was learning that he's telling me these stories. Um, Another time, we're on the air. He and I used to do these special broadcasts, right? So, some news would break hours before All Things Considered. We had to get it all out on the air. And so we would do a special broadcast where I would say, you know, Ronald Reagan just announced a blah, blah, blah. Um, Dan, explain what's going on. And we'd do about 10, 15 minutes of this and shoot it out to all the NPR stations so
And
they
he
could
had a
throw it.
great voice too, very
Yeah.
distinctive voice. I can
And then
hear it now.
he would be the news analyst. I was just,
Yeah.
introducing the news analyst. One day we're preparing to go on the air, and we're waiting for the engineers to set our voice levels on the microphones. Okay, and so he gets in front of the mic. He says, "Hello, Bob. Hello, Bob. Hello, Bob. Hello, Bob." And I'm thinking, "What's he doing? There's nobody. I'm not
Where,
named Bob. I'm not
where's
Bob.
Bob?
No,
What
where's
about
Bob?
Bob?
Where's Bob? Where's Bob?" And then I said, "Dan." And he said, "This is what we used to do in the old days before we talked to Edward R. Edward Robert Murrow.
Uh, did they call him Bob?
They called him Bob."
Oh, I never. That didn't come out in any of the George Clooney stuff.
And so here's Daniel Shore saying, I used to work with Edward R. Murrow. Now I'm
Yeah,
sitting here in a studio with you, Richard.
that's cool. I got a
And
little. I've got a tiny personal anecdote about that. When my father was a Hearst journalist who ran for
mhm.
Congress in '64 and lost, and after that he was offered Edward R. Murrow's old job at the U.S. Information Agency,
Wow.
which I
Yeah, yeah.
thought was I still think was very cool. He turned it down because the pay was $25,000 and he had 5 kids in New Rochelle, New
Right.
York. That wasn't going to fly. But I had said goodbye to all my friends. I thought we were gone, but it never happened. So okay. So what your career progresses? What sort of did you, it sounds like you were happy in your career. What were sort of the big takeaways from your career? What kind of sticks with you about it?
Hmm. You know, it's a great question. I haven't thought about that a lot, frankly.
Buster, we're supposed to ask great questions, aren't we? I'm just saying this to you. It's like I've been going through these podcasts and 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 people, it's sort of a way to buy time, and they say,
Sure,
"Oh,
sure,
great
sure.
question," as they try to figure out what to. But it's like that's our job. And
Personally,
you're never going to hear me say great answer. Well, yeah, I will sometimes.
right.
Great answer.
No, personally, the biggest takeaway for me is how lucky, how fortunate I've been. How the hell did this happen? I teach my boys. I got two young adult sons. I tell them, you know what luck is? Luck is preparation meeting opportunity,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I guess I was really lucky to be, there when somebody says, okay, we need somebody to go do something. Hey, Buster, go do it.
And now,
Um,
Buster, your
hmm,
career does not exist anymore. Like you actually, my father worked 33 years for one employer, Hearst
yeah,
Newspapers.
right,
That
right,
was
right.
it. And
Yeah,
you worked 34 years for National Public Radio. And
yeah.
people in our generation, in our class of 1976, are maybe the last group of people, the baby boomers, who could not that all of us did it, but you could do it. You could stay in one
Right.
place. And maybe was that your expectation that you would be at NPR 34 years later?
I left the Bay Area to go to work in DC, figuring, maybe I'll be there a couple of years, then I'll be back here. So I didn't expect to spend 34 years at NPR. At a certain stage, I realized I better hang on to this job because,
Right, because journalism is dying. Journalism's
journalism
falling
is
apart.
changing, it's dying, and I'm going to be retiring one of these days, so I better hang on to this thing for as long as I can. But for most of that period, no, it was just, you know, um, I was having fun, and so
Yeah, good
why not
job.
keep doing it? Why not keep
Journalism
doing it?
is really the one of the fun jobs. What creeps into your bones is always the bitterness of something or other. Maybe my career, I didn't become a columnist, or this didn't happen, or that didn't happen. But it sounds like your career was varied enough that
Yes, yes. There are things that maybe I would have done differently. There were times when I think I got passed over, not for promotions, but for some recognition for work that I did, and
yeah,
they seem to have forgotten that I was there. Um,
yeah, yeah,
but that stuff happens. It's life in the big leagues, right?
yeah. So in 2019, you retired just in time, as you said, I think in your Red Book essay, because COVID hit and you got a nice buyout before COVID. So that's good. What have you been doing since 2019 is a long time ago? What have you been doing?
I basically retreated home. Well, everybody was staying home in 2020,
Of course.
21, 22. We're
Yeah.
coming out of it in 22, right? I retreated home and I was,
Hanging
head
out.
chef so that my wife could continue working.
Do you
So
make Mexican food?
I make all kinds of food. I can, as long as you can read, you can cook, right?
Uh huh. That's great.
uh, so, uh, I, so that's what I did. And then in 22, I thought I got the itch again, and I started um, researching a story about my old high school and why its history has not been told, why
Oh,
nobody knows that there was a successful model of integration in this
yeah.
working class. So I worked on that for a while, and since then I've been looking for something that I can really sink my teeth into, and I've been helping my brother establish an alumni association so we can help our high school, which has fallen on hard times.
For that
That's what
high
I do.
school, for the
For that,
Richmond, for the JFK High School in Richmond.
yeah,
And we got a bit of a short, late start here, and I have a hard stop. So I
yeah.
could I could talk to you for a long time, Buster. And I'm so glad that we met. We had never met until the reunion. But
That's right.
to
But
have radio. Go ahead.
let me say for this record, people I know and love always spoke highly of you, Michael. So
Oh,
there you go.
okay. Well, thank you, Rick Sondick, who I'm having lunch with tomorrow. Amazingly, after not seeing him, he didn't come to reunion, but he was one of my
Right.
favorite people. I appreciate that. Thanks, Buster. I have one. It's a short list of radio people in our class. You,
Hmm.
um, Dan Raviv, who was a
Hmm.
stellar CBS News reporter for I think longer than 34 years, like
Okay.
forever.
Right.
And I'm a bit of a pretender. I actually spent 11 years on radio, 5 years as
Wow.
the color analyst for the University of Vermont women's basketball team. And then I did
Well,
a talk show in Colorado for 6 years. But it's a very small, and you could probably add, are there other people I've forgotten? Are there other radio people in our class?
I can't think of anybody, and if I do in a few minutes, I'll be kicking myself. But
Yeah, it's very niche, in other words. But the question I wanted to ask you is, did you always have the radio voice, or did you get the radio voice because you were on radio?
it came out around eighth grade.
Is
No,
that does
seriously.
that have anything to do with why you're in radio, why you went into radio? Your voice?
You know, when I first got on the air at KPFA, heard myself, and then saw people react to it, I thought, maybe there's something here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and that's very typical of radio people. You'll see some guy, random guy, in a local station in Colorado, and the only reason is he has an incredible voice, and so
yeah.
people would say to him, you ought to be in radio." In my case, nobody ever said that to me until I was on radio. And then people, oh my gosh, you've got an amazing voice. I said, like, that's funny because nobody said that for 55 years. So I think it's just because you're hearing me on radio.
Well, if you remember Bob Edwards, who was a
Oh,
host
yeah.
of Morning Edition,
Talk about a voice.
he once told me, Buster, you might have a face for radio.
I've been told that. Yeah. Well, listen, Buster, I'm so glad to know you. I hope we can get to know each other better. We are
I hope so.
actually, full disclosure, kicking around some ideas, which is
Yeah,
fun. We should probably get Dan Reviven on that,
that'd be great.
huh?
Good
you
idea.
know, yeah, it's not a bad idea. But I'm really grateful for your time, and what's interesting to me is just sort of the consistency of your path. You got on it pretty early, thanks to Hugo Morales, your tutor at Greeno, and you kind of stayed on it, and that's not an easy thing to do, and certainly not in journalism. So, congrats, and enjoy your bucket list, and as I like to say, see you at the next reunion.
Very good. I plan to be there.
Yeah,
I
me
hope you do
too.
that too.
Knock
Okay.
on wood. Thanks,
All
Richard.
right.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.